If you're interested in spiritual awakening or enlightenment or meditation, this video will be perfect for you because I'm going to be talking about what happened to me when I sat for a 5-month silent meditation or Vipassana retreat. And so let's get started with this video, shall we? And so in 2016, after getting divorced and ending a 7-year relationship, I decided to go on a several months silent Vipassana retreat. So this didn't just come about randomly. Actually, it was an idea that I had for several years, but upon the ending of that relationship, there was nothing else that was holding me back. I left my job, I left my home, I left my partner. And so then it was the time that I could actually fulfill this dream. And so I went to Lumbini, Nepal, which is where the Buddha was born. And in this town of Lumbini, there are several meditation centers. And so in this particular meditation center, which was called Panditarama Lumbini, which is a Vipassana center from the Mahasi Sayadaw tradition from Burma, one can sit for several months, from a week to several months. And so for that year, I spent 5 months in silence doing a Vipassana retreat there. So for the first 2 months, what happened to me was that I was sitting in a room and meditating around 15 to 16 hours a day. In this particular tradition, we wake up at around 4:30 a.m. and then begin meditation. Everything in this meditation center was done in extreme slowness. So the purpose of moving extremely slow is that we develop a very high level of attention to detail and mindfulness. So everything that you do in this meditation center, you have to do extremely slowly. As you walk to the hall, as you eat, everything should be done extremely slowly. And as you can imagine, moving at such slow speed takes a while to get used to. However, after a few weeks, you begin to enjoy even moving slowly and doing everything extremely slowly. However, as you can imagine, it takes quite a while to get into this kind of rhythm of meditating for 16 hours a day, whether it's meditating in the sitting posture or meditating by walking. The meditation technique that is taught at this meditation center is to observe the breath at the abdomen and this area in the belly as it goes up and goes down with the breath. And as you focus your attention on this small area of the body for so many hours, for 16 hours a day, your attention becomes more and more and more refined, and one begins to go through these different stages of awakening. And as I was just recently coming out of a 7-year relationship, there was a lot of grief that was coming up for me. So for the first 2 months of this retreat, I was really practicing with working with a lot of different emotions like sadness, like grief, like anger, like rage and sadness. And this was very therapeutic, sitting in a room and watching these feelings and working with them, learning how to feel those different emotions. Was, in one hand, very, very challenging, but on the other hand, it was extremely helpful. And as I continued to meditate for more and more hours, my attention became so refined. As you can imagine, when you put your attention on a small part of the body for so many hours, for 15 hours a day, the perception of the body becomes more and more and more sharp, and your concentration begins to get stronger and stronger. If you've ever done a meditation retreat or a Vipassana retreat of a few days or 10 days or a week, you can probably relate to the fact that after a few days, the volume of your thoughts begin to go down and lower and lower and lower. And of course, when you do this for several months, it becomes even more so. So as you begin to focus more and more of your attention for so many days, 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks, and 6 weeks, your attention becomes very, very powerful. And even your perception becomes altered as if you were taking even some psychedelics like mushrooms or LSD, but naturally, without taking any substance. So when we begin to move through these stages of awakening in this particular tradition, this is called the progressive insight. So as you begin to cross what I referred to in my previous videos as Kundalini awakening, which is actually a very initial stage on the spiritual development journey, then one begins to enter a stage that is called dissolution. In the stage of dissolution, my experience was that you begin to notice how each and every part of your body and of your mind are dissolving into finer and finer and finer vibrations. Sometimes it can even be experienced as if when you move slowly, you can experience it as if you're moving through a field of tiny, tiny little bubbles. And as one crosses the stage of dissolution, I was crossing what's called the dark night of the soul stages of spiritual practice. This was spending the majority of that 2-month period crossing this dark night of the soul stages. So that involves going through different feelings of misery, of grief, of sadness, of meaninglessness, and continuing to practice the meditation despite all these challenges. And I remember that sitting for that 2-month period was sometimes so challenging that I would take a walk outside of this meditation center or outside of this monastery every few weeks and just walk around and just see, like, is it worth it? Should I continue to sit this meditation retreat? As you can imagine, to sit for so many months takes so much discipline and effort. And sometimes I would just leave and have a look outside and see, actually, life continues to be as it is. It's not like if I leave this retreat and go somewhere else, life is going to be so amazing. So I was able to stay for that 2-month period in this meditation center and to continue to train my attention and go through these stages of the dark night of the soul. Then I received a phone call from my family saying that my grandfather died. So I decided to end that retreat, which lasted about 67 days. But during that year, I still didn't feel complete. I still didn't feel that I got to experience what I wanted to experience, which was a stage which is commonly known as stream entry, the first stage of awakening, which is what I wanted to experience by going in this retreat. Whether that is a useful goal to have or not, that's what I felt at the time. And so after a few months of being back home in Israel, I decided to go for another 3-month period in that meditation center. And so I came back to Nepal, I came back to Lumbini, I came back to this meditation center. And that retreat, this retreat that lasted around 82 days, was the most fascinating meditation experience I ever had. As I returned to the meditation center, after about 2 weeks of practicing for 16 hours a day, my practice continued from where I ended it on the previous retreat. And so my attention started to become even more and more and more refined. And what I recall is I started to see light, not only in my meditation, but also in the dark. When I was walking around the meditation center, I would just see light everywhere. This was the beginning of the more advanced stages of the meditation, which are called the higher stages of equanimity or sky mind. And as the practice began to deepen into those stages, the energy begins to move up from the third eye into the crown, and one can begin to sense the crown area begin to open up. And those stages were fascinating. I remember that I would meditate from 4 a.m. until the evening. And at a certain period of the day, as the energy began to move into the crown and to open those channels in the crown area, I began to spend sometimes minutes, and as the retreat progressed, even hours in states of deep stillness, of deep emptiness, of deep loving kindness, of calm, of concentration. It was fascinating and amazing, and such a beautiful feeling of profound gratitude for the ability to sit for so long. It was very challenging. I still wanted to leave the retreat sometimes, but I was using the memory of my father. So my father died when I was 18 years old of brain cancer, and he was also a spiritual practitioner, a seeker on the path. And during this retreat, I always reminded myself, when I wanted to leave, I reminded myself of his death and how he would be proud of me that I'm sitting this retreat and how life is short. And I used this contemplation to help me to stay on the retreat. Of course, I'm giving you a very short summary of what I experienced there. But as the practice began to deepen, also what's fascinating is my visual perception began to also change, as if I was on some kind of acid or a mushroom trip. Everything became like this mystery, colorful wonderland. The way that the wind moved through the trees, the way the animals looked. One of the most profound moments of this retreat for me was looking at a line of ants as the sun was hitting some spider webs, and everything transformed into this magical, amazing wonderland. I almost cried just by looking at this line of ants. And there were so many beautiful, deep, and profound experiences that I was having during this 3-month retreat. And it was a very beautiful, romantic time with myself. There was so much gratitude, so much love. Of course, there were also challenges that I was experiencing in my meditation, a lot of fear as one's identity begins to dissolve and one begins to rest in pure being and pure awareness. Many times fear can come up as a resistance to experiencing the identityless state the states of no self, and that can be sometimes very challenging. And after 82 days, I decided, okay, the visa is 3 months. I have experienced so much beauty, so much challenge. It's time for me to leave. And I wanted to go see a familiar face. And one of my best friends was in the south of India. So I decided, foolishly, I decided to end the retreat and immediately take a train to New Delhi. And I had never been to India before that. And my senses, as you can imagine, after 82 days of meditation, were so sensitive and so sharp that I took the train to New Delhi and I freaked out. I was so unable to handle all this sensory stimuli that I needed to take a few days break before I continued this journey. And so if you ever go on an intense meditation retreat, whether a few days, a week, a few weeks, or especially several months, I highly recommend that you take some transition time. And as beautiful and as full as love you may feel, experiencing the intensity of the world after sharpening your senses so much is not necessarily a wise thing to do. However, it took some days and I was able to recuperate and enjoy traveling in India after this experience. I felt like a child. I felt so open, so touched by everything I saw. I felt like my capacity to love and to connect to other people was increased so much. And now it's been almost 6 years since I left this 5 months silent retreat period. And I still feel the effect on my life. Of course, there are still challenges in my life that are repeating. However, having that deep taste of awakening and the deep taste of what it feels like to spend so long in silence has been so instrumental, such a beautiful support in my life that I continue to experience the benefits of that deep meditation time that I did. And I definitely have the idea to spend another 3 months in silence one day. It's just that at the moment I'm more focused on my worldly life. And I remember that, going and transitioning into a 3 month retreat and then transitioning out of a 3 month retreat takes so much energy. It has to be done at the right time. And so if you're ever wondering what it feels like to meditate for some months, this is a short summary of what that experience was for me. And so if you have any questions, if you have your own experience that you'd like to share about silent meditation, you can put some in the comments below, and do subscribe if you enjoy this video. And so I hope you enjoyed it. If you want more of my help, you can click some of the links below. You can also get a free consultation with me, or join my free Facebook group, or get my free balance of mind training. And I'll speak to you soon.